And good
Okay, we
morning.
ready?
It's 9 a.m. in Chicago. It's 3 p.m. in London. I got it right this week, Darren. It's Darren and
Yes.
Steve on Across the Pond. Welcome, everybody, to our Monday morning live cast here on Facebook. And we then post this out on LinkedIn and do a podcast as well for this. Exciting week in the UK. Looks like green shoots of people getting back to work, Darren.
Yeah, well, I don't know about exciting, but definitely confusing. I think Boris has basically said, use your noggin, use your brain, and do what you think is sensible. But if you can work from home, you must. If you can't, then travel and go wherever you need to. But I think a lot of people are confused as to where the grey lines are, where the boundaries are. So don't use public transport unless you have to. Well, again, what counts as must and what counts as for the heck of it. So I think there's a lot of confusion out there, Stephen. I don't know if it's just the general public or whether it's just Boris needs to clarify the points and maybe bullet point it and list it for them.
Yeah. Listen, I just think everybody is confused globally right now. What's the right thing to do? There's a lot of people here talking about you've got to get the testing right before you open things up. You've got states here just, in my opinion, pushing caution to the wind and opening up and really, I think, putting themselves at risk and others at risk. And you've got a president here who's spent all weekend tweeting, basically. Over 100 tweets and retweets this weekend. I haven't seen any of them. I've actually spent the last couple of weeks avoiding mainstream news and just seeing what comes up in my feed because I'm choosing the stuff I want to see. But it's strange times still. Strange times. But we're here this morning with a couple of great guests. We've got a really dynamic guest list for you. We have Gary Burrows with us and Steve Preston. We're going to talk to Gary first. Gary's the managing director of malls and meeting places from Fit for Commerce. I've known Gary more years than I care to remember. A great guy, great friend. Let's bring him in. Gary, welcome to Across the Pond with Darren and Steve. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning, Steve. Good morning, Darren. It's 10 a.m. in New York, and I'm stuck in lockdown in New York. I normally live in Dubai, but I'm on lockdown in New York at the moment.
So Gary's expertise is, as the name suggests, all about malls and retail. We've known each other for a number of years. Gary, what's your take on what's happening in the global market around shopping malls? Pre-COVID, post-COVID. What do you think's going on?
Well, I spent 30 years in asset management of physical assets, malls and shopping centres, malls and meeting places. And at the beginning of this year, I moved over to Fit for Commerce, which is a leading global boutique consultancy in everything e-commerce, omni-channel and digital, because I recognised that is the way that retail was going and merging the digital and physical customer journey and customer experience was the way that the world was going, and I think that's been accelerated by COVID-19. This isolation, self-isolation, lockdown, whatever you want to call it. It is given digital or online shopping a kind of steroid shot in the arm, and online shopping was tracking in mature markets at 17 to 20% of the total spend. That has jumped massively in the past 6 weeks.
Sure.
With an increase of 72% of online shopping, with some areas being significantly higher than others. Grocery shopping is just off the scale, and that's tracking one of the higher than almost any other market segment or category. And if it takes human beings 21 days on average to adapt to a new behavioral pattern, then we've way past that 21-day limit during the last 6 weeks of lockdown. And then you've got to kind of imagine, well, how much of that is going to be sticky? How much of that will become the standard as people have gotten used to home deliveries of groceries, large bulky items. We had a Zoom meeting. We use Zoom, and that's become the new normal for us.
Sure.
So one of our colleagues was mentioning that the 80-year-old parents are now using online shopping for grocery shopping, and they love it. They've got used to it. They love it. Everything's delivered to their home. They haven't got to jump in the car and trawl down to a mall or a shopping centre or a meeting place, whatever you want to call it, load everything up into a car and then drag it all back. It's all delivered, and they're 80, and they're loving this kind of experience. So if you can imagine that kind of times by I don't know how many million households, that's going to become a significant influencer to the way that we shop in future post-COVID, the way the new normal is going to be, and certainly certain categories will retain some of that kind of that experience that we've had over the past 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at some categories of online alcohol delivery, that is a 400% increase. So you can imagine that's what people are doing at home. But
Sure.
Conversely, human nature, one of the other highest categories of ordering online, as well as the cosmetics and the requirements for disinfectants and hand sanitizer and all of that. But conversely, from the alcohol, people are buying sports equipment because they feel guilty about how much they're drinking, so they're ordering sports equipment to try and offset the drinking.
Sure. What do you think? What do you think is going to happen with malls going forward, Gary? I saw some reports last week around certainly department stores. Certainly here in the US where we are, that there's a possibility of 50% of department stores closing, which has a huge impact on a lot of shopping mall landlords and so on. What do you think shopping malls are going to look like post COVID? Are they going to become more ecosystems, local ecosystems instead of destination places? What's your thinking on that?
I think retailers have struggled to get up to speed with e-com, and the winners and losers. If you look at what's happened with Debenhams, I think Debenhams missed the boat on e-commerce. But if you look at one of our historic clients, Fit for Commerce had worked with over 600 retailers globally, and one of those was Nike. And Nike, the CEO of Nike recently announced that they've mitigated the physical store losses by having a great e-commerce platform.
Yeah.
And that is a complete indicator of kind of the winners and losers. Those that have awesome e-commerce platforms have continued to do well. I think Walmart has grabbed 50% of all grocery shopping in America. So if you've got a great e-com platform, and you can merge that digital and physical into one retail singularity, and that's what we're calling it. Merging that digital and physical customer journey and customer experience into one holistic ecosystem that is the retail singularity. Because after all, where we are now, historically, it was all about physical location. It's about dragging people to that store or to that mall or shopping center, and then trying to drive cross-fertilization of spend,
Sure. Yeah.
increasing dwell time. But now you can have a customer, and they could be sat at home on the sofa. They could be on a beach in Dubai, and they're still your customer.
Yeah.
So the physical location has now got nothing to do with who your customer is. And it's all about big data and capturing that data to ensure that we provide a personalized customer journey and customer experience in merged digital and physical reality that is the retail singularity.
It's interesting. You should bring up Nike there, Gary, because obviously they had a strategy of pulling out of malls, didn't they? Because they felt that they were driving customers to other stores, being kind of the anchor tenant, but their digital strategy has really paid off, as opposed to somebody like Under Armour who's really struggling right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Nike, they are more of a magnet tenant than an anchor. You know, the anchors are the hypermarkets, and as I've mentioned about hypermarkets, they, you know, if you're going to keep 20 or 30, even 30%, which is what could be possible of online shopping, most interestingly, that is fulfilled from that store in terms of a ring-fenced geographical postcoded area. If you're buying online and it's being fulfilled from your local hypermarket, then why doesn't the landlord that is the landlord of that physical space, why doesn't he get the percentage of that spend, even though it's non-traditional spend because it's online spend? But you know, we've moved into a world that is non-traditional. It's a post-COVID world, and this world is very, very different from everything before.
Absolutely.
So, you know, same with department stores. If you look at the article yesterday, Mail on Sunday, by Neil Creighton, Anne Pitcher, who's the managing director of Selfridges, she announced that they are moving into more digital. And I think department stores, as you mentioned, department stores, Steve, that a lot of department stores have struggled to get up to speed with digital as well, or e-commerce. I'm not sure why, but they seem like an ideal candidate for being some of the best in the digital sphere, or they should be.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Totally agree. So the focus for you guys there at Malls and Meeting Places is really now developing these new kind of combined strategies, you know, bricks and mortar and online and e-commerce and landlords going forward. How can people get hold of you, Gary, in the industry, and what's the best way to reach out to you?
Well, probably by our website, www.fit4commerce.com, all one word. We are online, in most of the other business or social media platforms. We're on a lot of webinars. I did a webinar last week from in Central Europe, which was 11 a.m. at 5 a.m. New York time. So getting up at 4:30 in the morning and then having a webinar for an hour and a half and then going back to bed was somewhat bizarre.
The new normal, right? The new normal.
But it is interesting the way things are going, the way the real estate industry is panning out. You know, people that have historically invested in malls or meeting places, shopping centres, whatever you want to call it, that's changing rapidly, and it's interesting how so many retailers are struggling, and I have to, you know, those winners and losers. Probably a lot of those retailers have not invested in e-commerce when the times were good. And they're struggling now. Yeah. But if you look at somebody like Al Shire in the Middle East, from Kuwait, they're one of the biggest retailers in the whole of the Middle East. They've got 100 fashion brands, retail brands under management, and including H&M, Debenhams, coffee shops like Starbucks. And they have developed their own malls. So they own the avenues in Kuwait, and they've got the avenues in Bahrain, and they're building a massive new development, one of the world's largest malls and meeting places in Saudi, in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And they've merged being a retailer with being a landlord as well. So one of the biggest issues is transfer of data, transactional data, and communicating openly and transparently information, so it can be amalgamated together into one big data platform that can be used intelligently for the benefit of both the landlord and the retailer, for the benefit of the customer. And interestingly, if you look at Brookfield are probably one of the world's largest developers of malls, meeting places, mixed-use developments, office complexes. And they've just announced a $5 billion rescue fund for retailers.
I saw that.
They've recently rescued Forever 21, and they've got a $5 billion fund to rescue other retailers. Now, they're looking at it from the other side of the fence, as being a developer of malls, meeting places, and mixed-use developments. They're merging with some retail. So they're bringing both the landlord and tenant into one ecosystem. Conversely, what Al Shire has done, being a retailer, becoming a landlord. And I think those are, William Gibson, the futurist writer, he said, I think it was 1999, that the future is here, it's just unevenly distributed. And I think if you look at those trends as to what's happening with Al Shire and Brookfield, you can see that the future will involve an amalgamated or merged landlord and tenant, just as it will be a merged digital and physical retail singularity.
Yeah, great point to end on, mate. Listen, really appreciate you having on today. Always a pleasure. You know I'm a huge fan of yours. And thanks, you're doing great work there. Gary Burrows, thanks for being on Across the Pond with Darren.
Thanks, Gary.
And we'll catch up with you again really soon.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Darren.
Cheers. Bye for now. Interesting insight there, Darren. What do you think?
Yes, I'm not a retail expert, but there's certainly a lot to learn, and Gary knows his stuff.
He certainly does. He certainly does. Yeah. So we got Steve Preston coming up now. Darren, tell us about Steve.
I've known Steve for a long time now, and Steve is also known as the career catalyst. So if you're looking at a new career or you're not sure what you want to do in your career, especially at times at the moment where you're either sat at home wondering if you're in the right job, or you're on furlough or you've been made redundant, then that's where Steve steps in, and I say steps in, but suddenly appears on our screen.
There you go, steps in. There you go. It's perfect timing.
Thanks for inviting me.
That's right. Before we go through what you do, Steve, I'm probably going to upset both of you here now, but you guys have got a few things in common. You both got the name of Steve. I believe you're both from the London area. Stephen, I know, Stephen.
Yes.
But this is where I upset you, because you both support London soccer or football clubs that aren't very good.
Oh no!
Oh dear.
So thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you all again next week on Across the Pond.
I had to think of it. I couldn't resist, because I once asked Steve if he was an Arsenal supporter, and it turns out he's a Tottenham supporter. So he's still talking to me, so that's good news. But yeah, Steve, do you want to give that's Steve P. Do you want to give a quick overview as to what you do?
Yeah, I am Stephen with a PH, really, but no, only my mum calls me Stephen. So, thanks, Darren. I'm a leading career coach, internationally acclaimed author of 3 books and 2 audio books, and speaker and developer of career and personal development products. So that's pretty much what I'm about.
Cool. Yeah. So, I mean, there's so much going on in the workforce across the world, Steve, right now. People getting laid off, people being made redundant, a lot of uncertainty, furloughed. I mean, what's your advice? What are you seeing in your business about that?
Well, I think there's a number of facets of that. I mean, it's obviously uncharted territory, really, isn't it? We've never known things quite on this scale. The last recession was probably some of the worst we would have known in our lifetime.
Yeah.
And people got through that. I mean, that's when I wrote my first book, Winning Through Redundancy, at the tail end of that.
Yeah.
It's probably now going to be rekindled in a very different way. And so I'm redeveloping I'm creating an online program to bring that course to life. But obviously, things have changed. But a lot of the basics remain the same. And the first thing I would say to anyone who's either been furloughed, made redundant, or laid off, whichever term you prefer to use, is basically to avoid what I call the scattergun approach. And I think I don't mean this disrespectfully, Steve, but I think it's probably more prevalent in the US, where people are so used to firing out their CV. And I mean, basically, if you think about it, if you fire out your CV or resume, as I know they call it in the States, into cyberspace in amongst thousands of people, then it's going to potentially get lost in the ether. When the first thing most people really need to do is to do a bit of a stock take. For instance, like Darren mentioned earlier, am I in the right job, or was I in the right job? Am I on the right career path? Do I want to do something completely different? And as my T-shirt here, I'm a firm believer in doing what you love.
Yeah.
And that will become, I know a lot of naysayers will say, well, it's all very well for you to say that, Steve, but in the current climate, how can I make that happen? Well, you can. But what I've been suggesting to people, Steve and Darren, is that there may be two strategies running in parallel at the moment. You basically need to do the work, and better time than ever to work on yourself, to work through, what really floats your boat, if you like, what you really enjoy doing. And then that might have to go on the back burner for a bit, depending on your financial situation. If you're someone who needs to earn money right now, then clearly you have to find some form of work or job that's just going to get some money coming in. Now, I would never recommend that in a normal course of events, because I'd always say, do a stock take your time and work through all this stuff. And I've developed a unique, proven 6-step, what I call career navigation cycle process, which helps people work through that. But again, the basics are still the same. People still need to work through things like what's important to them in their career and life and why. And they need to do all that sort of stuff before they start firing out their resume left, right and centre, because otherwise it's untargeted, it's not focused, and nothing's going to stick. But also, my experience of doing this stuff for many years now is that people rarely focus on anything other than their skills. And, having done work for other career management consultancies in the past, I know that they tend to focus primarily on skills, which I think is a big mistake, because I talk about on step 3 of my process what I call establishing your true marketability. And what I mean by that, it's not just about the typical skills stuff. It's about your attributes, your attitude, your knowledge, your wider knowledge, not just in work, but from life in general, your achievements, your strengths, your connections, because obviously that's all a key part of who you are, and your personal brand. You add all that together, and all of a sudden, that's much more powerful than just focusing on what a lot of people do, your transferable skills. Obviously, they're important, but with focusing on your true marketability or your complete package, if you like, all of a sudden there's more possibilities of what can be achieved. And unfortunately, most people don't do that work. They just want to go straight headlong into exploring opportunities, which on my process is step 4, without doing all the hard graft. But as I say, any applications, any CV resumes can be untargeted, unfocused. And if you ever do get an interview in that situation, if you're fortunate enough to do it, having taken that scattergun approach, when you actually get into an interview, you're not going to be able to sell yourself in the best light.
Sure. The whole recruitment industry's changed, I think, because of obviously the digital approach, right? And you've got LinkedIn getting involved with job postings and people like Indeed and all of those guys. What's the key things to avoid or navigate away from, Steve? I mean, you talked about just throwing your CV out there and hoping it sticks somewhere. Are there any like little nuggets in there that if you do this will get you better, better traction, better visibility, will get you the interview? What's the sticky points?
Good question, Steve. And I would still revert back to what I've always been saying for years, is that circumnavigate the whole process. And how do you do that? Well, you do that by developing and optimizing your networks, finding people who can open doors for you, and finding people who can champion your cause, who can be advocates for you. Some of these job boards at the moment, one of my clients was telling me, and this was way back, a few weeks back, when the world had just started changing as we know it. And they were saying that certain jobs they were looking at on there, and on LinkedIn as well, I believe it tells you how many people have applied. And these were into the 300-400s even then. So you can imagine what it's going to be like now. So, you have to really stand out from the crowd in order to be able to really have a hope in heaven in that sort of situation. So my advice would be step outside the competition, circumnavigate all that stuff. As I say, find ways to network your way into an organization you might particularly like for whatever reason. People you need to connect with, but you're distance from them. So find somebody who can help you bridge that gap. I honestly believe that now above all time, people's networking skills, both online and offline, will be absolutely paramount to their future job and career success. And interestingly, I saw something just before we came on the air here from a good contact of mine in the US, and they've actually changed their profile on, I think it's on Insta, and it basically says your CV or resume is not the way to get your next job. So they're clearly on board with that as well now, which say it's not been the typical approach in the US.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
If I can add something else, if I may, Steve.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I think people have to challenge the typical one job or doing one type of work paradigm. With what's happened, it really must start to get people thinking differently. My last book, Portfolio Careers, How to Work for Passion, Pleasure and Profit, was all about that. Am I allowed to show it?
Yeah, of course you can.
Yeah, there you go. This has been a great passion of mine for many, many years, the whole portfolio careers development, where basically you earn from multiple income streams, multiple activities. And of course, if you have something that's online as part of your portfolio, which I don't have enough of yet, but I hope to in due course, and that was a business plan of mine for the year, ironically, then you've got a much better chance of success, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was talking to a contact who's actually a case study in the book, because the book's full of real life case studies. And it was quite ironic because since I wrote the book, he added to his portfolio, and he one of his real passions was gardening. And most of what he did before was various aspects of online and network marketing and that sort of stuff. But he decided that he was going to take a horticultural degree, which he did. He passed, and he's the last, I think, 2 years or so, he's been doing all aspects of gardening. He's been very successful. However, because of the nature of the work he does, he can still have his online stuff and his network marketing stuff alongside that. Of course, with COVID, his marketing fell off.
Yeah, sure.
And he's gone full steam into developing even more network marketing stuff. And he stumbled across something, I think by accident rather than design, which he's now saying is completely open up a whole new world of not just income, but a whole new world of living for him, because it's a particular well-being approach. So, yeah, I think there's a number of things there.
Great stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I was going to say, because I think it's interesting, we talked about working through career change and adapting your resume or CV for another job, but you might not want to work for another company. You might want to work for yourself. And I was once told by someone that when you work for an employer, you've got one customer. The customer is the company you work for, whereas when you run your own business, portfolio careers or otherwise, you've actually got lots and lots of customers. And you're actually, in a way, you're actually safer than relying on one single job.
Well, I think there's different views on that, Darren. Unfortunately, as you know, the self-employed community haven't been treated quite as well in the UK as the employed. But we won't get into the politics of all that. But I believe what you're saying. The challenge is for people who are currently out of work to actually get that mindset shift that actually says, yeah, I can actually have more possibilities by working for myself, even though you have to accept there's always going to be peaks and troughs. That's the nature of the beast. But no one can allow for COVIDs and things like that. That's just completely, out the water, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think to have a safety net where you haven't got all your eggs in one basket has got to be a good route nowadays.
I agree. Steve, how can people get hold of you?
I would suggest they check out my Career Catalyst website, Steve Preston, thecareercatalyst.com. I got a couple of freebies going at the moment, which I can maybe just
love that. Yeah,
and that will certainly benefit the wider audience, because one of them is a free career health check, which they'll see pop up on the website, and it's like a bit of an MOT to check where they're at. And the other one is actually particularly good value, because it would normally be £50 or more. And it's my electronic career values tool, which I'm currently offering for free. And that is a really, really powerful exercise. If I can just share very quickly, but the first guy who took up that offer, I followed up with him the other day and I said, well, how are you getting on with it? And he said, well, actually, I haven't finished it yet. It's actually more complicated than I thought. I'm thinking, well, if it was simple, there'd be no point, would there? There is some real value attached to this. So I said, just bear with it and finish it in your own time, and then let me know when you've done it. But it's a very, very powerful exercise, because when you understand what's important to you in your career and life and why, it's the foundation to build from.
Absolutely. And they're available on the website, Steve.
They're available on my Career Catalyst.
Superb. Listen, thoroughly enjoyed the conversation today. Darren, thanks for bringing Steve on.
Yep. Thanks for
best of luck for the future. Stay well, stay safe.
Yeah, likewise, you guys.
Yeah, thanks very much, Steve Preston. Talk to you again soon. What's some great insight there, mate?
Yeah, some good tips as well.
Unbelievable. Yeah, superb tips. So talking of tips, our top tips this week are based around pivoting.
Yeah.
So
pivoting is, first of all. Sorry.
Yeah, so from a business perspective, pivoting is kind of looking at what other things you could be doing in your business that is, you know, away from the norm, isn't it? You know, that if you're in, as Gary was talking, if you're in retail, for instance, and you can't open, how can you pivot the business to switching maybe to an online or e-commerce, you know, curbside pickup activity? Or are there other services that you can do? You know, can you create an online learning system or something like that? So that's kind of my definition. Yours is fairly similar, Darren, I'm guessing, yeah? Hey, he's done the Frozen 2 thing on me. Look at that. Just at that point. So, okay, well, I'm going to continue then. So this is called busking, right? If you're in media, this is called busking. This is where the script goes off and you have to like dive in. So let's talk about pivoting. So as we were saying, we're looking at, you know, have a look at your business, see what services you might have, see if you can create an online learning system. Maybe you can create an ebook. Maybe you can add some value, like Steve was talking about. You know, you can have an online service, or you can do some kind of a tool that you can help. Hey, and he's back. Here he is. Are you back with me there, mate?
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry, yeah.
So yeah, no, I just did a quick song and dance, and I was saying I was busking away there till you came back. So top tips for pivoting. Number one.
Yeah, I think I come from a marketing background, so we're always told to go and identify what the needs are in the market, what the trends are, what's happening, and I think most entrepreneurs, they've done this 12 months ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, or they just know it. It's in their head. And I think the first tip is to write it down, brainstorm two things. Brainstorm, or maybe this is two tips, but brainstorm what the trends are, where we're going, which is clearly things like we're moving to working from home remotely, we can't go to shops, we have to do social distancing, we're relying on technology. I'm just throwing things out there, but write down what the trends are. And then secondly, write down a list of potential products that person can sell. Maybe it's based on what Steve's just talked about with what you value and what you're good at, what your skills are, and what you do, and try and marry those new trends with your current business and what you're good at.
Yeah. And the third tip on all of that is execute it, right? You know, actually, you know, I talk to a lot of people that are, you know, create post-it notes on everything and actually never execute. And you know, now's the time. Everybody's got time for that. So execute on that and look at what else you can be doing and how you can pivot your business. There's a whole raft of stuff out there, and look at affiliate programs and you know, online selling and all of those sorts of things. Social media is full of great ideas as far as that's concerned. Our funny this week, Darren, what we got one for this week.
We have. Hang on 2 seconds. Big deep breath.
Here it comes. So
yeah, you might not get what this is about, so I'll need to explain. We've got a bird that's nested in the car, in between the wing mirror and the car itself. And this photo was taken in Asia. I can't remember where in Asia it was taken, but it was taken, and it just shows that we're all people working from home or stuck at home and can't go anywhere, so the cars aren't moving. So this lovely little bird here decided to build his nest in the wing mirror.
How lovely is that? How very good is that? Very good. So one other thing that we do want to share with everybody is, and I'm gonna just share this quickly, is that the new normal is out this week. I don't know if you can all see that. This is a collaboration from people from my network, including Darren, just about how COVID has changed business. There's some thoughts in there and ideas from a number of different people, all within my network. We've got traveling nomads in there. We've got people from Venezuela, Australia, the United Kingdom, from the US. Hopefully it's going to be a page turner. It's free. It's an ebook. And if you keep an eye on Darren and I's LinkedIn, you'll be able to find where you can get it. You'll be able to grab it off of the Pop-Up Expert Facebook page as well as websites. So that's going to be out this week as well. So great show, mate. I want to do a bit of a quick plug for myself, if that's okay. You can catch me on TD Ameritrade Network at 12:45 Central today. You may know from time to time I do a bit of television work for the Ameritrade Network, and we're talking about Under Armour results today. So hopefully you can tune into that. Look out for the tug. I'll give you a quick ear tug. You know I'm thinking of you all there, and we'll see you next week on Across the Pond with Darren and Steve.
At the usual time.
Okay. See you all soon. Take care.
Thank you. See you.